want to welcome everybody to the B&H Photo Event Space, both everybody who decided to join us here today in New York City and everybody that's watching online. My name is Larry Cohen, and this is Olga Torrey. We dive together. We've been published in a variety of dive magazines. I'm also a founding member of the New York Underwater Photographic Society and a past president of the New York City Sea Gypsies. Olga is also, her background is as a fine artist, so she's a lifetime member of the Art Student League here in New York City. So I want to tell everybody who's watching online that if you're watching from Facebook, please, if you have any questions, put those questions in the comments and we will answer them over the week. So thanks again. And now we're going to start to talk about what we need and what equipment we need and how to use it underwater. So to work underwater, we need to get ready. Are you ready to get ready?
Well, before we're going to do that, I would like to warn all of you that Larry and I will speak with peculiar accents. So my accent comes from the former Soviet Union, and Larry is coming from the South Jersey. So now, if you don't understand us, please listen carefully, and if we speak too fast, listen faster. Then we'll be okay.
We don't understand English.
Yeah.
Except you. We count that.
Okay, so now, that's
one other thing. When we do questions and answers at the end, please, I'll repeat the question so our audience knows. Now, we do this because besides being photographers, we are silly. But besides that, as underwater photographers, we have to see. We both wear glasses. So yes, we do have our prescription lenses in our mask. I even have a bifocal mask. So
and myself, important. As you could see, I have also lenses. So
there you go. Now I can't see and I can't breathe with this thing on. So it's coming off.
But that's how you can actually see underwater and not have water into your nose. So you can actually focus on taking your photos.
Okay, so now let's get started and start talking about what's needed to take images underwater. The first thing we need is a camera. Makes sense, but keep in mind that housings are not made for every camera. I also do chat and email at B&H, and I get many, many questions, and people come in and go, I got this camera, I want a housing, and they're so upset when there's no housing for that camera. So make sure there's a housing available and a housing for the kind of diving that you want to do for that camera. Now, small point-and-shoot cameras could do a good job underwater. We'll go over shortly the various features that we really want in the camera. Also, mirrorless cameras are a good option these days, both from Olympus, Panasonic, and Sony. Still, DSLRs are a good choice, and we're going to go over shortly that depending on the size of the sensor is going to determine what lenses we use and also how we're going to handle our underwater photography. Sony mirrorless, they have the crop sensor cameras, and their full frame cameras are also now very popular. And these cameras, there are housings for all the cameras that we're looking at here. So what do we need in a camera? First, sensor size. The larger the sensor, the better the image quality for the most part. The point-and-shoot cameras that we were looking at, the RX105 and the Canon G7X Mark II, are both point-and-shoot cameras that have a sensor a bit larger than most of these small cameras. Our control, we want manual control. You'll see shortly when you're shooting strobes, we want to be able to control the exposure manually, and of course a variety of lenses, and we'll see shortly why we need certain lenses for shooting underwater. So the housings, we have a number of companies that we sell housings for here at B&H. We're lucky today that a couple of those manufacturers have tables outside. Icolite is right up the corner here. NIMR is by used, and we got Fantasy and CNC downstairs. So the material the housing is made out of, polycarbonate plastic, like the Icolite housing, works well for a lot of diving recreational depths, less than 200 feet. Aluminum housings like CNC and Aquatica are a little bit more finesse with the controls, and they also could go to 300 feet. So for the technical divers out there, diving rebreathers, doing deeper dives, these are the housings that you'll want to get. CNC also has housings for their point-and-shoot cameras. NIMR, an Italian company, please stop by and see them because they came all the way from Italy to talk to us today. They have a variety of housings. The first one in black is made of Delrin, and that's their new pro housing. They also have, that's rated to 300 feet. Their normal housings that they've been doing are rated to 200, and they sell a housing that you could add a strobe connection, but it does not come with one, and this is really for surf photography. What's interesting about their pro housing is that that's set up with interchangeable rings for different ports. So it's going to sell with Nauticam. You could add Nauticam ports to it, but you could also buy a ring for Icolite ports and actually their own port system from their older housings. Fantasy, and we got Rand in the back here. You could ask him questions, but he has some of his people at the booth. They have a great little housing for the mirrorless Sony a6500. Olympus still makes housings for their own mirrorless cameras, and they have two styles depending on which camera you're going to house. One of them has interchangeable ports. The other one has a built-in flat port. And we'll go over in a little bit ports and why they're important. And even with the built-in port, that port's removable, and there's a few third-party companies that sell ports for that housing. For point and shoots, Icolite probably makes for the most variety of point and shoot cameras out there. Fantasy makes for just a couple of the point and shoots, but they've concentrated on the ones that are really, really good for underwater shooting. Canon still makes some point and shoot housings for some of their point and shoot cameras, and Sea Life cameras are very popular. Their micro camera is more or less kind of like a GoPro in that you can't attach a flash to it. What I like about the micro is it's completely sealed. The battery charges from the outside and it has built-in memory. We have a really good friend who could flood a housing while drinking a beer, okay, at a bar. So for her, the micro is perfect. There's no way she could flood it. She's been using that camera for like a year now without having any problems, and she does a pretty good job. You could use continuous lights with this camera, but not strobes. So, what's the first and most important rule of underwater photography?
We have to get so close to the subject that there will be little water between the subject and your camera. So this way you have a better resolution and much sharper image.
So how are we going to do that? We want to use macro lenses. Now, if you have a crop sensor camera, most of them have a cropping of 1.5 times. So a 100 millimeter lens is going to look like a 150 millimeter lens. If you're using a full frame camera, I personally like to use 100 millimeter lenses, but if I'm using a crop sensor, I'd want to use something like the 60 millimeter, because whenever you got a macro lens on the camera, you're going to see the whale shark. It's as simple as that. You're going to see something big that's not a macro subject. So at least with the 60 millimeter, you could pull back enough to maybe get some image and not get, just the eye. So everything looks 25% bigger and closer underwater. That's an advantage to us when we're shooting macro. So the kind of ports that we want to use are flat ports. We're going to see shortly a port chart because we got to look up the lens, figure out what port is going to work on the housing and what extension might be necessary to go between the port and the housing. You'll also probably, if you want to do manual focus, which focus is critical when shooting macro, you might want to put a ring, or some port charts will allow you to put a ring on the lens so you could manually focus. Now, what happens if you're using a point-and-shoot camera, you can't change the lens, and you also can't change the port? Well, we really want a housing where we could put on a conversion lens. Usually it has a 67mm thread. Most point-and-shoot cameras do have a macro mode, but then we're going to be a ½ an inch away, and we're going to scare our subject, and it's going to be hard to light. So using a close-up lens or a diopter on the housing will get us a little bit further away, but not too far away, and still give us a magnification. Fantasy makes 3 different ones, depending on how close you want to go, and they're optically really good. So what are we going to shoot with this setup?
Well, I personally use macro lens, my 60mm lens on my camera. And as you could see, the nudibranch and the little shrimp.
So for these kinds of subjects, ideally, that's what you want that for.
And what's the name of these cups, as we call them?
I don't remember, but there we go. These are shots in Cuba.
They were taken in Cuba, and they're very tiny mini cups. I forgot the name of that. But again, get close and use your macro lens and take a photo.
And this photo, Olga did shoot with a point-and-shoot camera, but she had 2 strobes attached, so she was able to get great lighting, and she did have a close-up lens on the camera.
But before we continue, just take a break, take some water.
Okay, go ahead.
So as you could see, Larry goes so much about the equipment. And so I always admire Larry because he has a tremendous knowledge of underwater gear equipment. So he always focuses on the main equipment questions and material, and I'm just listening to him. But later we're going to pay more attention. I'm going to speak more about the images. So I know how to drive the car, but I don't know how to fix the car. But Larry is the guy who knows how to drive the car and how to fix the car. So he's the guy who knows how to understand all the gear. So I'm just like you, learning from Larry about all those lenses and gear. Okay, so let's keep continuing. Yes, you just continue, I will just follow.
Okay, so with the macro lens, when you use that, the subjects could be a little bit bigger, but still this gold chain link moray eel was a medium size and was able to get with the macro lens.
So that photo was taken of yellow nudibranch on the wall in Alaska. Again, I just got close, put my strobes properly, close, and took this photo.
When you shoot macro, a lot of people do tend to shoot down because that's where the subjects are. But if possible, try to get under them and shoot up. Of course, we still don't want to damage the reefs. But in this case, these clownfish were up on an anemone kind of high, so I was able to get down low and shoot with a macro lens. Also patterns. Sometimes just coming in close on a sea fan and getting the pattern makes for an interesting image.
So when we traveled to Cuba, Garden of the Queens, we were able to snorkel with crocodiles, and it was the highlight of our trip. So again, you want to be close to a subject, no matter how subject is big. So
or how sharp their teeth are.
Yes, no matter what. So you want to have, again, less water between the lens and the subject, so you have a sharp image. So Larry got very close, and use wide angle, right, Larry?
Yeah, this was with a micro 4/3, which has a 2x crop factor. This was a 7 to 14mm zoom, which if I was shooting on a full frame or 35mm camera would be a focal length or an angle of view of 14mm. So I got close, I still felt safe, dome protected me. But Olga decided to get really close.
Yeah, but anyway, yes, my camera ended up in his mouth, but it's, I was able to take it back. Yeah, but it shows you how beautiful animal he is, and his teeth better than mine for sure.
Did you think he was going to go for you next? Or no?
Asking if it would go for us next. They really weren't aggressive, but they were opportunistic. We could go over some stories later on that
And
one.
I'm thinking just the reflection on a dome,
Yeah.
he sees himself and thinking that's another opponent that comes his way. That's another way of thinking.
So with this image, you could see how close we are to him. And you could see that his teeth, and he's right up, but he's looking at himself. He's looking at his own reflection. So what lenses do we want to use? We could use a wide angle lens. Again, since we shoot micro four thirds, the 7-14, which will work on both Olympus cameras and Panasonic cameras. For the APS-C size sensor, the Tacina 10-17 is the most popular lens, and it's probably one of the better lenses to use for wide angle. It is a fisheye zoom.
So I used my fisheye. We were diving in Norway on one of those German shipwrecks, and as you could see, the shapes of the pipes are not straight, as you could see. So it's slightly curved. So it means that it's obviously the fisheye, but also fisheye allows you to cover so much of a space, because this was a large subject.
While still being close.
It's still,
Olga's
yes.
probably less than 3 feet away, but because of the fisheye, getting in that whole area of the wreck.
And that's why it's so well lit up, because I'm very close and my strobes pull all the way out.
But you got that distortion, but that you could use as a design element in the photo. Here's that same area of the wreck. I'm shooting with the 7mm, but not the fisheye design, so I don't have as much area in, but I don't have that same distortion. So, when we...
Both of you were shooting from the same distance in those two photos?
The question was if we were both shooting at the same distance on those photos. We were pretty close to being in the same area, you know. So what do we need to put on the housing when we're shooting wide angle? Like I said, everything looks 25% larger and closer underwater. So when we're shooting with a wide angle, so we don't get vignetting, and also so to correct that size distortion, we use dome ports. So the larger the dome port when we're using a wide angle, the better we're going to have edge sharpness. Fisheye lenses already have that curve. So we could use a small dome like this Aquatica 4-inch dome. Again, for some lenses, we'll need a port to go between the housing and the port, this extension. In this case, this extension has and comes with manual focus control. So with a zoom lens, in this case the 16-35 Canon, we could manually focus and still control the zoom at the same time. But we still need a ring on the lens itself.
So here, another example of using a fisheye lens. So it's a very large shipwreck, and Larry's passing by with his double tanks. And as you could see, it's, the fisheye was able to cover lots of the parts of the shipwreck.
So how do we know what we need for each lens?
Don't be an inch.
Come into chat and talk to me, which what most people do. But on each of the company's websites, and also we usually post on our website a link to the port chart. You look up the lens and you'll see the port, the extension, and whatever rings you need, and anything else you need for that particular lens. Now, what if we're shooting with a point-and-shoot camera? Most of them will have a 24mm lens at the widest. So in that case, you need to put a wide-angle conversion lens onto the housing. So Icolite makes a very good one that's an actual wide-angle lens and will increase the angle of view. They also, for a couple of their housings, just have a dome. So what this does, it's an auxiliary dome. It goes on the front. It's not going to widen the view of the lens, but it's going to correct that 25% distortion, so the lens will have the same angle of view underwater as it does on land. Now, Fantasy has this wide-angle lens, which does both. This has a wide-angle optic, so this way you're getting a wider angle of view on the lens itself, and because it has a built-in dome, it corrects that 25% larger distortion. So with this one, you actually get a full 130-degree angle of view on a point-and-shoot. Fantasy also has what they call their big eye, and this, again, is a dome that just corrects the size distortion. So as you could see, by using, and in this case, Olga was still using a point-and-shoot at that time. She has on a wide-angle lens and is getting very close to that sand tiger shark in North Carolina.
And because sometimes, most of the time, visibility is not good. So that could be a problem for taking sharp photos. Again, even if it's a shark or crocodile, get close. But be safe, obviously, use your sense.
So here's the photograph that Olga shot when I was taking the photograph of her taking the photograph of the sand tiger. So we're going to show some images and go over different things now in different places that we go diving, and we're going to go over lighting as well.
So we're going to also talk about the split shots, which could be very effective and interesting. So here we were on a mission to sink the Challenger 600 at Dutch Springs. It's one of the quarries in Pennsylvania where we usually go and dive and use our photo studio. And as you could see, just staying on a platform and just able to put the camera on and slightly up, we're able to see the divers who are working underneath of the plane and the plane itself on the surface.
So here the Nautilus Explorer with one of the dive guides underneath it. When you do one of these over-under shots, it's good to use as large a dome as possible because this way you got more area to go in between. You know what, we'll do questions at the end, okay? And then we'll go from there. So jot them down so you remember what your questions are.
So we were in Socorro last year. It's Mexico. It's a fantastic place to go and dive, and it's well known for the large animals. And one of the large animals are the giant Pacific manta rays.
Here we are in San Diego, and Olga's photographing me on the wreck of the Yukon. And by using the wide-angle lens, she's able to bring in quite a bit of the wreckage as well as the diver, in this case, which happens to be me. Also notice my camera equipment and that I have a dome on the housing.
So you're able to get closer, so you can get the colors and the size, and yet the main subject, which is a model.
So with getting close, for the most part, try not to shoot unless 2 feet away or closer, but all rules are meant to be broken. It's also with a wide-angle lens, you could pull back a little bit more and create a silhouette. So let's go over color. And the way light works is it's made up of many, many different colors. But it also tends to be a little bit one color or the other. Light bulbs are going to be warmer, 32 Kelvin. If you take a photograph daylight balance, you're going to get a warm image. Fluorescent lights tend to be green, so you'd get a green image. When we go underwater, the warm colors filter out fast. Even as low as 5 to 10 feet, we start to lose reds and oranges. So how do we correct that? There's a couple ways. One of the simplest ways is that we want to use a filter. And when we use a filter, if we're in blue water, we'll use a red or orange filter. If we're in green water,
Magenta.
right. We want to use the opposite color of the water. GoPro, a lot of people use it. It's a very popular imaging device. A lot of people use it without using lights. So a good idea is to use a filter. And there's various filters that are made for the GoPro, including the flip filter, which is an interesting concept. You could flip down a light orange filter when you're in maybe 10 feet of water, and then a heavier orange filter when you're in deeper water. Also, the GoPro has a very wide angle view, which is good for a lot of imaging. But what if you do want to shoot macro? With the flip filter, you could flip in a macro lens for your small subjects and flip it out. So when you use a filter, you're correcting all the color, including in the background. So the images tend to be a little bit flatter. Now also, we're underwater, so some subjects, especially ones you can't get close to, let the image go blue. Another way to correct the images, the color, is to bring a white light close to the subject. For stills, it's best to use strobes. We sell a variety of really good strobes. CNC has the YSD2. They also have the YSO1. Icolite makes some very good strobes. The 160 and the 161 are basically the same strobe, but the YS61 has a brighter LED light that could be used for aiming and could be used for shooting video as well. The 51, the DS51, is their smaller strobe. And CNC also has the YSO3, which is TTL only. It doesn't give you as much control, but it's a reasonably priced strobe if you're starting out. Sea Life also makes a strobe that's pretty good that you could connect to any housing, any point and shoot housing. So when we're shooting with a strobe, we want to change a little bit the way we're taking photos. Our shutter speed only affects, the shutter speed only affects your ambient light. It really does not affect your strobe light. Your aperture will affect both, and we try to use strobes that have a power control. So everybody has a different way of working. The way we work is we use our shutter speed to go up and down, a faster shutter speed to give us a darker background, a slower shutter speed to give us a lighter background. Then we try to keep our aperture constant and adjust the power on the strobe.
So in this photo, you just missed, okay. So in this photo, as you could see, Larry's in cold water, which is local water of New Jersey, and green color is beautiful. So in order to show this beautiful green color, you have to use the slow shutter speed. But again, if you just want to focus sometimes just on the diver and take everything out, then you have to use a much faster shutter speed to go and black out. So it's you're the one who create the image.
Now, how do we get the flash to go off at the same time the shutter opens? There's a couple different systems. Fiber optic cables are a good way to do that. What we're doing is we're using strobes that have a built-in slave trigger in the flash itself. So the cables get plugged into the housing in front of where the camera's built-in flash is, and the light will travel from the camera's built-in flash to the strobe. And that's one way of firing it. Here we're showing the adjustment dial that we use for the power of the flash. When we do this, it's very important that you don't set your camera flash on auto, because if you're in bright sun, the flash isn't going to fire, your strobes aren't going to fire. So you want to put it on fill flash or force flash or whatever your camera calls it, so the flash goes off all the time. The other thing is a number of companies, including pretty much all of them now, but Fantasy, CNC, and Nimar that are here, definitely have LED triggers. So instead of putting on the camera flash, you could plug in the LED on cameras that have a hot shoe, and the LED isn't using up as much battery power, and it will recycle faster. The other method of connecting is with a sync cord. So on these housings, and this Icolite does all the time on their DSLR and more advanced housings, is they have a hot shoe connection inside the housing, and then the sync cord connects to a waterproof bulkhead on the outside of the housing. And some housings have dual bulkheads, so if you're using two strobes, you would use two sync cords. And then the sync cord would plug into the flash. We also want to be able to position the flash correctly. So here we're going to have arms connected to the housing. We have two different kinds, either ball joint arms or flex arms. With the ball joint arms, you use a clamp to put the different sections together. And now that most cameras will shoot video and stills, we could use a triple clamp so we could mount a video light right next to a strobe. Here we have a setup that beneath the surface has a flex arm that has a ball connection on each end. So Olga's shooting with a triple clamp, so she has a video light right next to her strobes.
I also find out that flexi arms not always work in certain situations. So when we dive in a very heavy currents, when you want to position yourself and take photo of the subject, my flexi arms were going like that, literally. So squeaking and just moving. So this way, just I use different kinds of arms, but for the particular, if it's heavy current, flexi arms not going to work.
Also, flex arms seem to work best with shorter arms and more with point and shoot cameras than more advanced systems.
And also, when you do a small subject photo like macro, flexi arms much easy to use for that matter.
I'm going to go a little bit into the GoPro. As you saw with Olga's setup, she does keep a GoPro on top of her housing to shoot video while she's shooting stills. And with the GoPro, the current ones, the Hero 5 and the Hero 6, are waterproof to 33 feet. They do not include a housing. But for not a lot of money, you could buy a housing to bring it down to 130 feet. Now, most people use filters, but we like to play with it sometimes and also use video lights with the GoPro.
Case, I have to point my camera down, to take the photo of this white octopus. Again, let's just go with the flow.
So the way this now connects to the housing, with a point and shoot, most housings have a 1/4-20 socket, just like a tripod socket, and the tray attaches to the bottom of the housing, and then there's various connections to get the arms onto the tray. Also with the DSLRs. And Icolite, DSLR, and Mirrorless housings, they use a quick release connection, and you could get these pins for their arms or just get the pin so you could attach any ball joint arm to it. Now, a lot of cameras will not autofocus that well in low light or need contrast, so it's good to have a focus light above the port. So both Fantasy and Big Blue produce focus lights that when your strobes go off, the light goes out for a second. This is important if you're working in low light with a slow shutter speed, because you don't really want this light to affect your image. The Big Blue one is 1100 lumens, so you could almost use that as a main light if you're inside an overhead environment. For video, we have the Kelgan lights, as well as Big Blue makes them as large as 15,000 lumens. The Fantasy 3000 is a good compact light, 3000 lumens, is very good for video. You also have a red beam that you could use for night dives as a focus light so you don't scare your subject, or when you use a filter on your camera, you could shoot the fluorescence that many of the subjects could send out.
So when Larry said that when it's dark, it's meaning that when you do a night dive, which people do, or you're in a cavern or a cave, right? Or you're inside the shipwreck. So you must have a focus light, otherwise your camera will not be able to focus and take a photo.
So the blue light, as much as it's designed for fluorescence, also makes a great prop as we go back to this one.
Yeah, we almost always all the time use the focus light, again, just for the reference and for the more intrinsic images.
But here are a couple images of fluorescence shot at night and shot with the blue light and the filter.
You're scheming the blue and the red together?
Yeah, it's not a true yellow, and it's a particular blue light, so you catch the fluorescence.
And it really brings the colors, makes them very dense, like in this one.
It's like going back to the 80s.
Yes. So talking about the shutter speed, which was interested to show the beautiful blue color on one of the corals in Cuba, the Garden of the Queen, and just wide angle to get good lighting and show enough of the surrounding. So I have to use my wide angle lens for that.
So here, using a shutter speed to get more middle blue, and because I like this color blue and this grade of blue against the red grouper.
It's like a twilight. When you go take a photo of the city and the twilight color, so you can also manipulate the color of the blue. So here again, I'm using a slow shutter speed, and it's local waters of New Jersey, green water, and again using the slow shutter speed and framing my model, which is Larry, and a beautiful framing with full of different kinds of marine growth.
Now here I'm using a faster shutter speed. This was shot during the day, but using a faster shutter speed to get a black background on the New Jersey shipwreck, the resort, where these ocean pouts took up residence.
Because the whole idea was to focus on those two fish who were cuddling together. The rest of the wreck did not mean anything. So that's why Larry made the shutter speed so fast and make everything dark and black.
So we'll go over a couple different camera setups. Also, here I got Aquatica housing using ball joint arms, just strobes, and notice I'm using a little port, and that tiny port because I'm using a fisheye lens.
So at the time, I use my flexi arms, as you could see, and sometimes I do video because my camera allows me to do still shots and the video. So when I have enough photo shots, I just go with the video. So here, as you can see, it's my camera and housing and the tray, and my arms, flexi arms, attached to the tray, and they have obviously the strobes and also video lights. Because when I do video, I have to put my video lights on.
So now we're going to go over, some different locations. Some different locations where we dive from close to home and far away. And we want everybody to look at what we've just been talking about, what lens we've been using, what port we've been using, what lights we've been using, and how we're balancing it out. I don't know why this was doing that, but anyway, this photograph, we're now in the quarry Dutch Springs. We're close to home in Pennsylvania, a couple hours away, and that is our kind of our photo studio where we try new gear and try different things, and still close to the surface, balancing out the available light and the strobe light.
So what's important underwater photography, and as a photographer, you must have a good trim and buoyancy. That means that you don't flip your fins, you don't silt up, all the sand and particles will come up and fill your camera lens, and your photo is not good anymore. But sometimes you can use it for different effects, like we used in this photo. Larry just kind of went around this little boat, and he silted up but on purpose.
That's
So
our story, and we're sticking to it.
So, and as you could see, it created some kind of drama, right?
We did it for the drama. It wasn't a bad kick.
A little bouquet.
So Dutch Springs has many things to play with that are fun to photograph. With this helicopter, I used the shutter speed so we could get detail with the ambient light of the tail, but using the strobes to pick up the detail of my subject, which is Olga in this case, coming out of the helicopter.
And talking about that large subjects that we have, the Challenger 600 that was sunk in Dutch Springs, Pennsylvania. So it's a large subject, but visibility was fantastic. So I just used my wide angle and I just pointed down. Again, don't point down, but in this case you have to point down to show the whole scale of the subject. The water was good, and it's come out like that. So that was the first moment when the plane was sunk, and I went inside the cockpit, and as you can see, it's clear and pure and nice, but no pilots there.
Also, at Dutch Springs, people practice take classes. These are perfect photo opportunities, underwater in the surface, including a rescue class, where somebody's shooting a reel.
So in this case, I was shooting up because not the model, but the diver who was practicing the reel was right above me. We're talking about our friend Renata, which creates more interesting images.
And shooting up using a slower shutter speed, getting a nice blue background, even at Dutch Springs.
Now this was all done with the my point-and-shoot camera at the time. So you can have good photos just using your simple cameras, and then you advance.
There are many other people taking photographs.
And as you could see, it's all our friends, and they're using different kinds of equipment. It's Nauticam housing, I believe, and ball joint arms, and
Inon strobes.
yeah. So you have your own preferences.
Now, this is an example of Schnell's window, where you're actually an optical effect, where you see through the water and see the surface up above. But it's still a matter of using the right shutter speed to catch that and balancing the strobes.
So it's on the side of the pump house at Dutch Springs, the quarry, and again, Larry's on a beautiful structure, and using my wide angle at the time, we can show the structure. The shutter speed shows the beautiful blue color, and the model who's in the front of you.
Also trying to go with different lighting effects. At Dutch, there's all these docks. The docks are kind of split and the light streams through at times. So able to try to catch the beams of light coming through with the diver.
So we converted this photo into black and white, and that's the platform above my model, which is Larry again. And I can see as those sun rays going through the slots of the platform and creating interesting effect.
There are fish at Dutch Springs, at least 2 or 3 of them. And but practice. You have to, besides practicing your photography, you have to practice approaching marine life. And Dutch Springs isn't a bad place to do it.
So this is a sunny side fish in a shallow water, and you can bring your macro lens for that.
We also run a photo kind of workshop with the New York City Sea Gypsies one time a year in August when the water warms up a bit. And to practice lighting, we bring these more than willing subjects that will sit still for us. Yeah, he wasn't moving. It was very, very cooperative.
But usually underwater photography, you have to be quick because fish doesn't wait for you. She doesn't, doesn't pose for you. You have to be following and figure out how the fish is going to move.
There's also some fantastic events at Dutch Springs. Every Labor Day and Memorial Day, the Historical Dive Society working group will allow anybody to try commercial or hard hat surface supplied equipment. And these make really great opportunities to just above water and below water to photograph people in this gear. It's also fun to wear this gear.
And that's the people, the hard hat divers. It's a very tough job, and they're the one who fix tunnels, bridges, and they put their lives under risk.
Now, you never know what you're going to see at Dutch Springs. So you hear the creature of the Black Lagoon. There is a creature at Dutch Springs.
So we went to the Silver Comet. People who dive locally, they know that particular object. So this is the within the Silver Comet, and the koi, that's the fish that he made this little boat as his home. So we feel like we invaded his space, and he was annoyed by with us. But he was just kind of swimming around us, and Larry used the red light, and he went from the back of the comet and went through, and I was able to catch that. Like I said, the
glow behind for the
so
the
created the intrinsic image. This is our friend Gregory, who is a fantastic scuba instructor. So he was our model, and because he has a fantastic trim and buoyancy, and he understands everything we ask him to do, so it's important. So I just gonna play it with a split shot and try to get my fins doubled image.
It's only because he understands your accent.
Yes, he speaks Russian. That was easy. Absolutely, that helped.
So again, using the beams and balancing out the light.
And actually taking photos against the sun. Usually say, take photos in the direction of sun. Don't shoot up because it's much harder. It's more like advanced technique, but it's fantastic subject to play with once you get better.
So when you're shooting right into the sun, you're going to need a faster shutter speed. You're going to have to turn your strobe power up a bit more because the subject will be silhouetted otherwise. We also play with portraiture in Dutch Springs. Now, when it comes to the plane, we don't shoot a lot of video because too lazy to edit it, but here's a little thing we did on the sinking of that airplane. Templates in iMovie, so you just throw the clips in there and that happens.
And by the way, it was not in 40 degrees of water, it was 34 degrees of water because it was the first week of March, right after the snow just went off.
You notice how great the viz was, but it was cold, really, really cold. So now we're going to move from Dutch off our coast. I think the one thing with the local diving, first, there's really good local diving opportunities, but very important, if you don't practice your photography, when you go on that trip, you're not going to be ready to shoot. So try to shoot locally and practice. The more you shoot, the better you're going to get. And then we're going to be going over some warm water as well. Let me say this now, too, because we got Amos Nakam, who's going to be speaking at 4 o'clock, and he runs some fantastic trips. And we got Marco from the Philippines back there who has some brochures for his resort in the Philippines. So there are some great warm water opportunity, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be diving up here in cold water either. Okay, we dive dry suit, so we kind of get into it in there. 1 second. Yes, Amos?
5 minutes break.
What's that?
5 minutes break.
We have to keep going because of the live stream, but thank you. So now we're going to move to the local wrecks off the coast of New Jersey. So here we're shooting on some wreckage on the Stolt de Gali, which is a ship that sunk in the 1960s. It's just the stern, and it sits in 130 feet of water, but it comes up to 65 feet of water. So divers of all levels could do it. Visibility tends to be good, but again, by using a slow shutter speed, was able to get a bright, vibrant green background and having my model just poking out and lighting it to get detail.
That was me. So again, breaking down. Now actually, I'm using the law of the photography, shooting up, and as you could see, my shutter speed was much faster. So it's why it's so all dark around, because my main focus was on my model.
On the wreck of the Alga, coming in close on the porthole opening, and all I really wanted to get was the light coming in. But those two fish decided to be really cooperative and be in the perfect spot.
So that was the day, about 4 years ago, we had, more than 6 years ago, we had a fantastic visibility locally. And it was on a shipwreck, stalled, the galley, and we have about 80 feet of visibility. It was unheard, unseen. So we totally were happy about it. And that's why, as you could see, Larry's inside the shipwreck, and I'm shooting up because it was just beautiful lighting and pure and clear.
The San Diego is the only major warship the U.S. lost during World War I, and it's about 8 miles off the coast of Freeport, Long Island, right here in New York. So the ship sits upside down, and when we're doing shipwrecks, we want to get the most interesting part of the wreck. Unless you're inside on the San Diego, the keel is kind of interesting because, like I said, the ship is completely turtle.
That was on a local artificial shipwreck called Tortuga, which actually lost all of that part of itself after the Storm Sandy. Doesn't exist anymore. But at the time, we were able to use it for photography.
And I also asked the jellyfish to go right into that place when I took this
Sometimes
shot.
Photography also depends on a lot of luck.
The marine life here might not be as colorful as it is in the Caribbean or warmer locations, but we have some interesting marine life. You saw the ocean pouts earlier. Here we got an interesting lingcod on the wreck of the Resor. And now we're going to move further north to the St. Lawrence River in the Thousand Islands between New York and Canada. The water's actually relatively warm. There's never a current, and there's never high seas, and there's some very interesting shipwrecks, including the Keystorm.
So in this Keystorm, it's one of the largest shipwrecks in Thousand Islands. And Larry used actually American flag as the point of the view of the photo, which makes kind of dramatic image.
I didn't put the flag there.
Are
It
you
was
in the
there.
freshwater part or the saltwater
This
part?
is the freshwater
Yeah, this
part.
is a St. Lawrence, Winnie River.
Yeah, this is the freshwater part of the St. Lawrence down by Clayton, New York, and Alexander Bay.
This is a funnel. This is the largest part of the ship because the ship kind of sits on a side, and that's I'm right there behind taking photo, and that's my focus light, as you could see. And Larry used it as my focus light as my point of reference, but also making very light, small, shorter shutter speed, and he brought up the green color.
In the sand and about 120 feet of water, the Keystorm has a nice large propeller, and like to photograph the propeller.
We're talking about also what I would like to mention, we're talking about the arms or the length of the arms, which is important. I'll tell you why. So if your arm's not long enough and using a wide angle and wide subject to shoot, you might have something like I have a little bit here. So again, a little bit of a backscatter, because at the time my arms were not too long. I have different now. So you have this in mind. If you have a wide angle, then make sure you have a
You want to bring the
proper arms.
strobes further out, further away from the housing, especially in this case, we're down by the sand in a freshwater river. Even just a tiny kick or just the bubbles, if we were diving, or in Olga's case, diving open circuit, the bubbles could cause a little bit of silt. So by bringing the lights out, we always use diffusers on our strobes, and we'll angle the strobes out a little bit. So we're using the soft edge of the strobe, not the center, harder edge. We could get less backscatter going that
But again,
way.
it was on a depth of 15, 20, 30 feet, so it's very dark there. So I have to make my shutter speed very, very slow in order to show the green background. So that was another shipwreck called America, and it also sits upside down. It actually was exploded when it had its cargo, so it sits upside down, and there's beautiful streamlined vertical walls that I use Larry as my model for that. And again, as you could see, if there's a green color, show the green color. It's beautiful.
I am using a fantasy light, which could be also used as a video light as a prop and add a little bit more interest.
And as
to
you
the
could see,
image.
when Larry appears in different photos, he had a different equipment. So this was his old inspirational rebreather, which he doesn't use anymore. And this was a lifeboat, which obviously did not do its service. Sits on the bottom of the river.
So we're going to move from the river up to Lake Ontario off of Kingston, Canada. Here the water's colder. We're now in the Great Lakes, so you could get a current, and you also could have very, very heavy seas, sometimes worse than the ocean. But again, we have some beautiful old shipwrecks, including this paddle wheeler. I decided to shoot this because I was a little further away than I would want to be with strobes, shoot available light, but still have Olga in there close so we get some scale, so we know how big this paddle wheeler is.
And because Larry just described that the lake would be very treacherous, that's why we have so many shipwrecks on the bottom. So now, a lot of shipwrecks has all kinds of artifacts, but by the law in Ontario, you're not allowed to take them home as we used to do it here. So you have to, if you find something, put it on the top of the deck so other divers can come and enjoy what we found.
Besides paddle wheelers, there's also sailing ships with really nice bowsprits. So now we're going to move into warmer water that we still don't have to fly to. North Carolina diving up here is fantastic. The Gulf Stream comes close. We do have to take some long boat rides. We have some interesting marine life and really fantastic shipwrecks, including a German U-boat, the U-352, and we could see the conning tower.
That was on a Carib Sea. It's another beautiful shipwreck with lots of marine life. And they had so much of fish that when I tried to take a photo of Larry, which is him in the picture, I had to take maybe 10 shots because the fish was covering his face. So this was only once, a split of a second, that I got the moment when the fish kind of got me a little bit of opening of his face.
You got to get the most interesting part of the shipwreck, like I said before.
Yes, when you go on your subject, you always look for the most photogenic parts of the subject. So we were on this papoose.
I think this was the papoose.
Papoose.
Yes.
That's the shipwreck that has a lot of shark in it. So, and I saw in the corner this beautiful toilet, and I said, wow. And then I see this black fish on top of the toilet. I said, well, it's a very intimate moment, but I want you to record it.
And the blackfish was going, wait a minute, no photos, no photos. But you could see how large the shipwrecks are and easy to swim through. And again, being down low, the light coming in, using the right shutter speed to get that and balancing it out with
and
the
wide
strobes.
angle, absolutely wide angle.
Like to convert to black and white at times. In this case, I'm inside the wreck, shooting out, like seeing all the fish on the outside and using a little bit of strobe light because I wanted the silhouette of the frame.
So that was another shipwreck. You remember the name of the shipwreck?
I don't remember.
One of those beautiful shipwrecks. So it's a large shipwreck. I was inside of this chamber, and I saw this little bit opening on the top. And I said, why don't you swim out and swim above and just kind of position yourself in this little hole, because we always want to have our models being framed. That's kind of idea, right? And again, fish was so much of fish, I have to wait for the fish to pass me by, and I was able to take this photo. And Larry right on the top, as you could see, the small guy, that's Larry.
There's many, many schools of fish in there, and to capture them inside the shipwreck is interesting. Notice the water is more green. When we get further inshore in North Carolina, we're getting further away from the Gulf Stream, and the water will tend to be more of a greener color than a bluer color.
And fish love shipwrecks because that's how they hide from the currents and just rest. Yeah.
Now, lionfish, we used to have to go to the Pacific to see these. They are an invasive species here. It's believed they either showed up when a ship dumped its bilge, or they might have been dumped from a ship bringing them in illegally for the aquarium trade. So as photographers, always like to photograph these guys, even though they're not supposed to be here. Now you could find them anywhere in the Caribbean. You see them all over in North Carolina, and they've been reported spotted as far north as Rhode Island. We have not seen them in the New York area, but we know people who have. The ocean spadefish is always, you see schools and schools of these on the wrecks in North Carolina. Really kind of interesting looking fish that's worth photographing. Also a variety of different jacks. Sometimes you get the jacks right inside the wreck. But for the most part, the reason a lot of people like to go to North Carolina are the sand tiger sharks. They're big, they got overhanging teeth, but they're slow moving and just easy sharks to photograph.
So again, when I look at that, at the ceiling of the shipwreck, I said, wow, I love that opening. And I just wish there would be a shark passing by. And finally I got one passing by. So again, it created a very interesting image, right? So the shark, the opening, the shipwreck. So that's what I was going for. So that's the portrait I tried to, because they're not aggressive sharks, but you have to be close in order to have the sharp image and have a nice lighting. And when they come to you and just turn quick, and that's it, you're gone. So I tried to wait, and I wait for him before he turned. I took this photo and face right to my, having the eye contact. And as you could see, the teeth kind of need some cleaning, I guess. But the beautiful, beautiful animals.
They're really not aggressive, but every year somebody tries to pet one and somebody gets bit.
And as you could see, the shark in the middle, again, at the time I was shooting with my simple point and shoot camera, Olympus, but I had my manual focus. So I mean manual adjustments. And as you could see, that large shark has a hook and the line. So they're still fishing them.
Now, I have to say, lighting is important when you do this, more so than the camera. I always joke that we had Olga set up with a $400 camera and a $400 housing with $4,000 worth of lights attached to it. So here we're using that same effect that we were doing on the shipwreck. Olga's shooting from the other side, and her focus light makes an interesting element on the image of the shark.
So this summer we went back to North Carolina. It was my second time. Larry was maybe...
I've been there many
million times. So I'm totally not a newbie in North Carolina, but I know it's a beautiful destination with a tremendous marine life. And we got, on a time it was full moon, visibility was horrible. We could not see anything. And we went to Carib Sea, one of those popular shipwrecks among the divers and photographers. So we just going down, and I could hear, and so I'm kind of going down, I don't see anything because maybe I have like 5 feet of visibility, and I could hear Larry in his rebreathe like, Olga, Olga, Olga. I'm like, what's going on? I thought maybe it's like shark or something happened to my body, and I'm looking, but the part of the shipwreck covering my vision, I cannot see what's going on. So I'm kind of trying to see, and I see this huge manta coming right over my head, and my camera was not even set up. And then when you shoot it up, you have to really redo your f-stop and your shutter speed. And that silverfish, and I'm like, oh my God, and she was so fast, and I was able to only get the shot. But because mantas are unheard being seen in North Carolina.
Very rare. Very rare. In North Carolina.
So I was a little bit, and she just was gone. So I wish I could just stay a little bit longer. But again, I'm happy that I saw her. We got the photo of her. So it's a timing and pure luck.
So it's kind of interesting. Like we see this, we photograph giant manta rays in Socorro, which we're going to see a little bit later. You expect to see them there, but then you see one in North Carolina, you're like so excited because you just don't see them there. Same thing, we didn't put the photo in, but at one point when Olga was talking about when we had 80 foot of visibility in New Jersey off the Stolt, there was also a barracuda. Barracudas are common in North Carolina. To see one off New Jersey was a rare sight, and we were really excited about it, even though I'm sure the barracuda was going, I thought I was in North Carolina. What happened? So it just kind of goes. And you never know what you'll see underwater.
Yeah, it's a new species of marine life.
So I'm going to go over a little bit Truck Lagoon. So now we're traveling a bit further. This is in Micronesia, and this is where there's quite a number of shipwrecks. Sorry guys, let me just hit back. So look at the size of this prop on one of the freighters, Japanese freighters there. Much larger than what we had on the Keystorm. Not all the wrecks are ships. Here we got a seaplane that sunk underwater. And these were mostly freighters, and the freighters carry all sorts of things. So we want to photograph that. Here, these mini tanks make great photo opportunities. I'll experiment. I shot it with strobes, without strobes, with a diver, without a diver. My favorite image was available light with a diver and a diver with a light. Shipwrecks, in this case especially, are war graves. Wars happen. I kind of find it really interesting that shipwrecks now bring life. So something that caused death and what was happening when they sunk is now a beautiful garden and something that grew. So we need to kind of keep a thought on that. When I dive a shipwreck, I try to study the history of it first, and I kind of think about that while I'm doing the dive.
So before Larry continues, I've never been in Truck Lagoon, but when I saw Larry's photos, I said, okay, that's going to be on my dive, on my bucket list, on my next dive destination. So hopefully, maybe 2 years from now, I will be able to go to Truck Lagoon because I heard it's fantastic diving sites there.
You want to talk about this wreck?
Yes, again, we're in a warm water now, Bonaire, and a shipwreck called Helma Hooker, which has a very interesting, spicy kind of history. So the Coast Guards in Bonaire got the signal that the boat was sinking. Something was problem with the boat. So when the Coast Guard came on the boat, they did not see anybody on the boat. There were no crew, no captain, nobody. It just was totally gone. And they pulled the boat back to the shore because they found out piles and piles of pot, literally. So what do you do with that? It's a criminal case, right? But there's nobody to sue because there was no captain, nobody, no crew. So they kind of spent.
Well, they had to get rid of the marijuana that they found on the boat.
So they decided to make the locals happy. So they, built a bonfire and they just burned the whole thing for about a few days. I'm sure everybody was so happy. But then they say, like, there's nobody to sue. What they're going to do with the ship? So they decided to pull it back to the ocean, and they drill a big hole and they sunk the ship. And that's now sits on about under 100 feet of depth.
And it is on its side, so you still get some of the structure. I really like being able to get the helm in this area and get in depth by, again, using the strobes in the front and trying to balance it out to get the available light in the back. Also the same wreck, same thing, this time inside, but using a slow shutter speed to bring the light coming in.
So at the time, I had just my first camera, Canon camera, in my, I call it housing. I did not even have the manual adjustment yet, just was pure point and shoot camera. And I just pointed up, pointed down, breaking the rule, and just showing the ships lining on its side and the divers passing by. Again, simple camera, but it can show something about your images that you would like to show people.
Using parts of the wreck. Again, I'm inside the wreck, shooting out, getting the blue background, and lighting up my model and the frame with the strobe.
This is a little boat called tugboat, which also after the storm Sandy rolled from 80 feet depth to 110 feet depth. So it's because it kind of goes a little bit declining. And again, it's a little one, but it's a beautiful shipwreck to play with.
Besides shipwrecks, and Bonaire is known for its reef, salt pier. The columns on part of the pier bring lots of growth, which bring in lots of fish.
Yeah, lots of fish, lots of growth, beautiful little, big, small fish.
Here's this one little guy enjoying relaxing on a sponge instead of a couch.
And again, we're just going to the reef, and again, lots of fish, lots of soft sponges. You can create your own images, play with that.
So from Bonaire, we're going to go to Mexico. And in Mexico, on Playa del Carmen, Riviera Mayan, one of the best things is the cenotes. And here is photography, it's pure light. You want to photograph the light. So in our case, we do go mostly with available light instead of when we're shooting and balancing out the light, our available light, if we're looking at our meter, we're going to underexpose anywhere from a stop to 5 stops if we want a dark background. On these photographs, if you're using our meter, we'll have almost a normal exposure, and then we want to turn our strobes down to just give it a kiss of strobe light to fill in the shadows and bring in some detail. So this way we don't get rid of the available light effect.
So when you go to the caverns, make sure that you go on a sunny, beautiful day, because there is no sun, there's no those lights or sun rays. So here I want you to show the size of the chamber, because it's a beautiful cavern. And again, I just use a little bit of the strobe lights to light up the limestone, and the diver further in between where the light is. And you could see the blue, beautiful light, and it creates interesting image. But again, the diver as the point of reference to show the scale of the chamber we are in.
So also, for me, it's the highlight in the shadow and catching that. I like putting a diver in for scale, but some images work better without the diver. Including this one that Olga shot of the stalactites with the beams in the back.
And actually, if you go back to that, so it's another technique to show not overexposed. As you can see, it's outside, it's the trees that grow on the edge. So if you go underneath, you're going to be totally overexposed. So but I use the cover of this rock, so I was able to show the levels of the image.
Here we have the diver using a wider angle view and seeing the light coming through. Also, on some of these cenotes, there's a film of algae on top. And that algae, on a bright sunny day, you get the shadows of the trees up above coming down that you could shoot from underwater.
And it creates a very beautiful pattern.
Now, when you do an actual cave diving, you have to be certified at special skills. You're in total darkness. These caves are rather shallow. So even diving open circuit, you might be in total darkness for up to 2 hours. When you follow that line back and you see that glimmer of open water, it gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling that you know you went back the right way. Now, we've been talking about balancing light, balancing ambient light to our strobe light. When you're in the cave, there is no ambient light, but we don't want flat of just our strobes in the front. So in this case, what I did was I put a strobe on the back of my model facing back so I could backlight that area and get more dimension. In this case, Icolite makes a slave trigger that could go on an extension cable. So I have the extension going from the flash to the front, so when my strobe's in the front fire, it will fire the backlight. Here's another example of that. Notice the difference in the cave. That was in Mexico, this is in Central Florida. So now we're going to move to the West Coast, staying in the United States, going to the California Channel Islands.
And as you can see, it's my first setup. Simple Canon camera and alkaline housing. No strobes, I did not own them at the time, or I did not know how even to use them. So I went with a simple constant light video light, and we were in California, Channel Islands, with a beautiful Garibaldi fish and very thick, tall kelp. That was taken with my little camera, Canon camera.
And a continuous light.
And continuous light. So you can create images with the simple things. So it's juvenile Garibaldi fish.
Here's a California sheephead coming in close on them. When we first saw these fish, we were kind of like, we got to photograph them before they go away. Then when we started going away, they followed us. And the kelp is really big in California, so it's nice to get the fish with the light coming through the kelp.
And so one of the many dive sites we had was this Eureka oil ring tower. And we went to dive to this location right after the BP oil explosion. So we had this meeting with the dive guide, and I asked, excuse me, but if what happened, we go and dive under the platform and it's going to explode, which just happened 2 weeks ago. And my dive guide said, Olga, I hope you chose the right religion. So
But you could
I
see
prayed.
that the oil rig is just a lot of growth ends up on it. So these strawberry anemones covering the oil rig and using the strobes to get that, using the shutter speed to get a little darker background and have a silhouette of the divers above. We didn't really see only a few in the water, but this oil rig became home for a number of sea lions as well. So here's a video that Olga shot with her first Canon ELPH camera in a Icolite point-and-shoot housing.
So I think what happened here, she saw her reflection in my dome. And she was so vicious. She was just coming and jumping on me and just biting me and biting and biting. And then I said, well, I left you alone. I said, okay, I have to go up. And that's what saw me like, she's crazy. And then, I can bite too, but it was an interesting experience.
So we're going to go from the Channel Islands down to San Diego to go diving. And San Diego going down to Mexico to the Coronados is just like going from Brooklyn to Manhattan. It's just like right there. So in the Coronados, you get quite a few sea lions. It's still cold water diving there in the Pacific. So we're in Mexico. We are in our dry suits, and you see these lovely sea lions, this one blowing bubbles.
Yes, they're very curious, and they love divers because it's something like a playground for them. So they were just bumping into me and into my dome and my strobes and biting my strobes. So it's a good, very nice interaction with those animals.
Going back to the sea lions, this was on our first dive in Coronados, and I just want to tell everybody, even though you check your camera when you get on the boat, you check it the night before, you check it on the boat, check it before you get on the water. Because last dive, where we had hundreds of these sea lions, we had to do a bit of a swim to the island. I turned on my camera and it went dead battery. So I got that first shot on the second dive. On these shots, Olga shot and I just played with the sea lions. But California, down in San Diego, there's also still Garibaldi.
Juvenile Garibaldi. And we call this San Diego rockfish that was sitting on the top of the shipwreck. So it's a good variety of marine life. And it's another shiphead. I think it's also juvenile. And so, as you could see, I love the openings. When you go to the shipwrecks, the openings, and just look for the interesting part. And I saw, okay, Larry, go inside. And then I saw this square kind of frame, and then I see this ship head just going through. And I reacted kind of quick, and like she was posing for me. She was not, but I was able to make the image, and yet with the green light behind. There was another big chamber, but it has no opening, but on the one that Larry, you can see poking in. So I have to squeeze my head, and I have to put my forearms together and squeeze my camera in, open my arms, and take photo of Larry when my camera was inside and Larry was outside.
These are all on the shipwreck, the Yukon, which was sunk on purpose. It is a Canadian destroyer. Again, look for parts of the wreck of the equipment.
And beautiful growth. Each shipwreck has a beautiful growth on it.
Since it was a destroyer, the guns are still on the wreck.
And that's in one of those shipwrecks. I put diver in. Again, when you go inside the shipwreck, you have to make sure you train for that. Penetration is very important. You have to be very safe. But we felt safe, and we went in, and I took a shot of Larry, again, showing the beautiful green color in the openings of the shipwreck.
And in the wheelhouse of the Yukon, I'm outside. I'm actually inside, shooting and framing Olga in the doorway.
So we are in Alaska, correct?
Yep, we're going up to Alaska now.
That's the boat we love, swell boat. It doesn't exist anymore. It was sold out to a different company. And we went to Alaska for 10 days of scuba diving.
So the Nautilus fleet, they're now just in Mexico. But at this time, they also ran in British Columbia and Alaska. And Alaska has a little bit of a different kind of life. You have things such as the sea fan.
And different kinds of fish, but China rockfish is a common fish there. And gray rockfish, they call them all rockfish.
So it's kind of good. It's gray, let's call it a gray rockfish.
Easy to remember that.
Now, this is a lingcod, rather different than the lingcod on the East Coast. And this is on the shipwreck America, which was a very, very dark dive the day we did it, even though we did it in midday. This buffalo scoping, so it's a matter of looking, getting the right angle, and using different lenses. One of the problems with Alaska is there's so much macro life and so much wide angle life. Which lens do you pick? In one hand, that's a really good thing about a point and shoot camera. The lens is on the outside, so you might not get the exact same quality, but you could put the lens on or remove it during the dive. Now, that being said, sometimes it's good to go in the water because you don't have that much time with a mindset. Today, I'm going to shoot macro. On this dive, I'm going to shoot wide angle.
But usually when we go on different dive sites, we ask the captain or dive guide what lens we should have. Is it a macro shooting or it's a wide angle shooting? So sometimes they will tell us, sometimes they will say, we do not know. It all depends on the weather or on the visibility or on a current. So it's pretty much pure luck.
When you're shooting a subject that's in a hole like this, you got to be very careful with your strobes, and sometimes you might not be able to position them exactly where you want, but it's kind of nice to get some shadow detail. These are wolf eels, and they mate for life, as you could see this mated pair here. But I guess if you looked like that, once you found somebody, you would stick with them.
So one of the highlights being in Alaska was taking photos of the salmon run. So there were millions, literally millions of salmon running against the current and releasing the caviar and just build it up and dead. But we were in about 2-3 feet of water with the cameras, and the water was cold, but it was a fresh water, and it was a beautiful, beautiful event.
Now, we dove one area that they nicknamed the graveyard because it was very silty and really not great for photography. But by shooting macro, coming in close, Olga was still able to capture some nice images.
Yeah, and again, if visibility is poor, take your macro lens, get close so you can avoid all kinds of particles in your photo.
Also, on some sites of Alaska, just beautiful, clear, green water, but nutrient rich, so everything gets really big. These giant meridian anemones was like diving in a field of cauliflower. So now we're going to move from Alaska to British Columbia. British Columbia is one of our favorite spots to dive. We tend to do long dives, and when we were diving there, the captain said it was hilarious. You're in the water for 2 hours, and you didn't even move 10 feet. There was so much to photograph.
So we were on the wall taking photos, and then I see this little snake passing me above, and I followed the snake, and I was very shy, saw me following her, and she kind of got to the little crevice and then poked her head out, and I was able to take the photo. I said, oh my God, what a cutie, what a cutie. Then we got back on the boat, and I asked, what it is? He said, wow.
It grows up to that.
So they do not age well.
So there, it looks like I'm looking in a mirror.
Now, by the way, they're nearsighted. So in order for them to see you, you have to pull back. Otherwise, they're like me. I'm nearsighted. So I have to get closer to you, closer to you, closer to you. Like, yeah. So
now they might be ugly, but they do have very nice personalities. And we decided to feed them sea urchins. And I was breaking the urchins open for them, but one of them got impatient and just grabbed one. I'm like, how could you eat that? But they have a plate in their mouth, so the spines don't hurt them. There's also giant Pacific octopus in both Alaska and British Columbia you could find. Various kinds, and again, lighting the octopus and trying to get the right exposure for the ambient light.
How big is it?
These were small for Pacific octopus. I would say, what do you say the span was? Maybe 4 feet.
maybe 4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, 4 or 5 feet at the most.
The one we saw in Alaska was really large. I was actually assaulted, but anyway.
That's a story for afterwards. Now, in cold water, nudibranchs are known for the Pacific and the Caribbean, but in British Columbia, you get some fantastic nudibranch life.
And
as
those
well.
two guys were actually, as you can see, I'm shooting down. They wanted on a leaf of the kelp, and I did not want to disturb because they had a very intimate process. So I did not want to bother them. I have to take photo looking just down. But again, I just show how beautiful they are. This is called a frosty nudibranch, and that's the nudibranchs we call the slugs without shell. It's slugs, but without the shell.
Also shrimp and various other marine life you could see there. So here, I'm shooting with the strobes, but it's picking up the color that's around it.
It's a reflection of the colors.
And little shells, there's just so much to shoot on the walls in BC.
And again, it's orchids, simple orchids, but I wanted to take macro shot to show the pattern of the needles, and I got what I wanted. And again, we're talking about the rich marine life and animals, they're all over there. And you swim along the wall, and there's those nudibranchs, there's just anemones, I'm sorry. There are all kinds of colors, all kinds of shades, like you're in a garden of flowers.
So now we're going to move to Cuba. So Cuba, now it's pretty easy for Americans to get there. And you do want to shoot the cars in Havana and the buildings and the people, even though you're there for the underwater life. The premier area of Cuba is Garden of the Queen. Avalon is one of the better boats to dive with. It definitely has to be done with a liveaboard because it's about 3 hours offshore. And there's just very, very impressive reefs. It's the largest and oldest marine park in the Caribbean.
So as you could see, Larry just actually used just a little bit of strobe because this fish is very bright, like a silver, like a mirror. So you have to be very careful how much strobe light you want to put on that fish. Otherwise, it's going to be overexposed.
So schools of many different kinds of fish in Garden of the Queen. And southern stingrays. In this case, he was buried. I barely saw him. So always be ready. This was definitely a grab shot. And the silting out in this case is from the stingray, not me.
And that's what we're talking about also the trim and buoyancy. If you put your knees down on the sand, you might injure an animal who just actually camouflage under the sand. So this part of the Cuba is also well known for the other large animals, or fish, as we say. This is a grouper, black grouper, which has a very powerful jaw. They're very aggressive, actually. They bite you really seriously.
But one of the reasons we're there is lots and lots of reef sharks. So this one's pregnant right there on the reef.
But still very graceful and fast.
And shooting up when they're close to the boat. In this case, I turned off the strobes, got the glow behind, and wanted to create a silhouette.
And I decided to go differently. I decided actually, same shark, we were pretty much in the same spot, just use my strobes to highlight the belly of the shark. So you make your choice of your own image. So here, I was taking a photo of the shark that has the sun behind her. And again, I could go easily with a silhouette, but I chose not to. So again, make shutter speed quick, fast.
Right, and also notice Olga's positioning the shark to take care of the middle of the sun. So this way it's not burning out and doesn't have detail. So going back to the crocodiles, we were snorkeling with them and we just want to show some images. Here again, Olga just likes to you have to get close really seriously.
Yes, again, my camera ended up in his mouth.
I decided to pull back a little bit because I wanted his teeth, but using a wide angle lens, getting a little bit more perspective to really push his teeth and his snout.
And they like to camouflage, so they try to tilt up so you cannot see them, and they will come and eat you. Like this one tried to eat me. But I saw his bright, sharp teeth. So, and when you're on a coral reef, there are plenty of small things to take photo of, like those Christmas worm, yeah.
Christmas tree worms?
Yeah.
Or a bristle worm?
And little fish that made the size of the head of the lighting.
Now again, this was shot with a point and shoot camera with a close-up conversion lens on the housing. So now we're going to move to Malaysia. And we were diving in Pom Pom Island in Malaysia, and there's many, many different kinds of clownfish, including this false clownfish or this Clark's anemone fish. What's really interesting is anemones sting. They're kind of poisonous. But these fish have a relationship with them, and this is where they love to live.
So showing the small sponges and the beautiful color and the pattern of that also creates interesting images.
Also quite a bit of soft coral in this area.
And this puffish, adorable. I love her eyes. She was so curious. She looked at me and I looked at her and we fell in love. And she posed by me for a couple seconds.
Now here's a lionfish where a lionfish is supposed to be. And this is on a night dive, so creating the black background, it's just there and getting an interesting angle on this fish. So as I said, when you have on the macro lens, you always see the big animals. So we're on the night dive and see this yellow blue spotted stingray that was huge I had on the macro. So what do? Go for the most interesting part, photograph the eye.
Just try to work within your limits. And so here I use my macro lens and a translucent cleaner shrimp that on a little soft anemone. And little, it's like a dollar kind of looking fish, but a very tiny mini fish. And just taking the background out of the focus. So the main focus actually on the fish and on the eye. That fish, still I do not know the name. If any of you know the name, please give it to me. We try to find the name. I call her as a horse fish because she's kind of like a shape of the horse head, which I like.
It's a kind of birdgrass.
Oh, okay.
Start looking from there.
Okay, we'll take a look. Mm-hmm. And nudibranchs, many, many different kinds. We saw them in cold water in British Columbia.
It's an Umbratha chamberlaini.
Oh,
okay.
Finally, we got somebody who knows more than we do. So it's, again, different shapes, different colors, different sizes. We know photographers that specializes only on nudibranchs. They do not shoot anything but just nudibranchs because such a collection of that.
So on a night dive, looking up the reef, you see what looks like tumbleweed coming up. It's just coming and coming and coming. And then when you get closer to it, you see there are these juvenile saltwater catfish. So shoot at different angles. We had that one shot, which was the overall, and then coming in closer to get the detail.
So Christmas tree worms, they're everywhere, different colors, but they're very skittish. So if you get too close, they're going to close and disappear. So you have to wait for the moment when they open up again. Oh boy, tell the story.
Okay. Mandarin fish are just photographed at dusk. The main idea is to get them mating. You need so much patience for this, extreme patience, and they're very small and they're very skittish. I kind of floated there and I went, okay, enough of this. And I went around and took other photos. Olga never got the mating shot, but she got this nice portrait.
It was the last day, the last dive. The next day we have to fly back. So obviously we have no patience or time, anything left for that mandarin fish, but we want you to have it. At least I saw her coming out. And some animals like octopus, it's always try to camouflage according to the pattern of the color and surroundings. So I was passing by and above the white sand, and then just at the end of my eye, I just saw something white poking up of the, through that white sand, and I looked, it was a little octopus. But I could see he totally as white as the sand around him. And if the something changes, he's going to change his color as well. So that's how they stay safe.
There's also a number of wrecks in Malaysia. This one was sunk just 3 days before we got there. You could see there's no growth, and you could see the writing on it. But even still, the wreck is starting to become home to various marine life.
And it's become a shelter for the local marine life.
There's also piers make a good place for marine life. This particular pier had so much marine life, but it was in shallow water and also had so much current. Very hard to deal with.
And that was the pier where my flexi arms were going just like that, just flying like wings because current was so strong.
Cuttlefish are really fun to photograph there, and here I was able to grab a photograph of Olga photographing a cuttlefish.
Again, I'm looking down because the only way I can get down because I did not want to destroy the growth on the bottom of the ocean.
But notice what she's got there. She's shooting with a dome, wide-angle lens. She's got 2 strobes. She's got 2 video lights on a flex arm, and she also has a focus light mounted above the port.
Very flexible flexi arms at the time.
Many, many turtles in that area. Could catch them resting or swimming.
So we went to Malpelo, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So as you can see, it's Malpelo. Why? Because the weather very rarely is nice. It's high seas, clouds, rain, currents. So usually we suggest only advanced divers to go, and especially if you're a photographer, you got to be prepared because you have to fight with all those elements of the weather and trying to take photos.
And you're on a small boat. You're actually on a large boat where you're living, but you're taking the skiffs out for the diving.
So here we could see butterfly fish. When you see butterfly fish, it means you're going to see large animals, because this is the fish that cleans the large animals, their skin from the parasites. And the Malpelo is known for the large animals.
But there's other things there to see, like these leatherback bass, which were fun to photograph, and also just schools and schools of fish, and playing with the color. Like when you're besides composition, part of your composition is look at the color. The silverfish and getting that one color fish close to center really adds some interest.
And because Malpelo is national park, it's protected, so that's why so much of marine life there, right?
Yes, it's actually part of Colombia, even though the boat that we took there was out of Panama. We're close to the Galapagos, and you'll see Galapagos sharks.
And so many big school of barracudas.
Small ones, but barracuda. Yes.
So very rich marine life. So let's protect our oceans so we can see more of that stuff.
These whippersnappers, the school was so thick you couldn't see past it.
And again, pretty much rare animal we saw, the stingray, manta ray. Okay, they look to me as the same pretty much. But anyway, we tried to catch it up. It just went, but on a side, and we just lost it because, like I said, heavy currents.
There's one area that was a cavern going through. The current would just whip you through, and this bass, this leatherback bass, was coming through the other directions. I was able to grab this one shot as we kind of passed by very quickly in the current.
And again, it's not a local reef with a lot of soft sponges and corals. No, it's all boulders and rocks, and lots of green eels and lots of oceans. You have to be careful where you're going to put your knees down or your hands, because the current pulls you. You have to hold yourself up. But again, be careful.
And you could see we have a spotted eagle ray in the back with a school of grunts.
Those urchins I told you about, actually one of the needle I got through my boot, into my heel. So it was a very painful experience. And the cardinal fish use sea urchins as its home, so they kind of work together. And we're talking about this beautiful fish. As you could see, I was able, only when I lit up, I was able to see this fish, but as you can see, it's just camouflaged with the color of this rocky wall.
So besides wanting to move your arms out for backscatter, even in clear water, you want a side light. So that will bring out the texture and separate the subject from the background. So guinea fowl, puff and golden face. Again, she was going through the current and just faced me up, and I looked like, oh, what a cutie. But it was, split of seconds, she was gone because of the current. So many different sorts of fish in Malpelo.
You just swim, on a reef, and all kinds of fish come to you.
We were very lucky that there was one whale shark that decided to stay with us on the bottom. Most of the time, in most locations, you're snorkeling with whale sharks. They don't allow you to use strobes or lights, so here we were able to do that. And you could see, this is the largest shark, and see the scale with Olga.
So that was the moment that Larry said, when you have your macro lens, you're going to see a big fish. You have a wide angle, you're going to see something smaller. So for all those 5 days, I had my wide angle and fisheye, and I did not see a single whale shark. So the last day, the last dive, I said, you know what? Maybe just take my normal lens. I'm going to take maybe some small fish. And what do you think? I'm going down, and this guy comes right toward me, and I have no wide angle. So in order to kind of put him in my lens, I have to back up away in order to get closer. I was so upset. To this day, I'm still very upset.
And whale sharks are one fish, even though you don't normally want to shoot the fish from the back, to see that enormous tail as it's whipping around and the divers around him works like an interesting composition.
So that's what I got with my macro lens. Big head and little eye.
So getting back on the boat is as treacherous as getting off the boat in Malpelo.
And as you can see, there's a line that when we get closer to the boat, we have to hang on the line with this heavy seas, so it let other divers to come up, and then one by one we're able to get back on the boat.
Now we're going to move to La Paz, where we're actually having to snorkel with the whale sharks, and visibility is not very good because there's so much plankton in the water, which is why they're there for eating.
So I use actually fisheye because it's a large animal, and Larry said visibility was not so good. There was no visibility. I ended up literally on the top of the head of this animal. Then I realized I was on the top of the animal because there was zero visibility. But they're not allowed scuba, and they're not allowed lights. So whatever visibility you have to shoot with. That's what we're able to shoot with. Just ambient light. Luckily, we had some sun goes through, so that was very helpful.
Also in La Paz, we have puffers and other fish. Cousteau called this the world's aquarium.
And this is a lot of one. We call it, young lady. What's the name of the fish? Can you tell us, please?
I can't really say the damselfish.
Yes, thank you, damselfish. It's a family of damselfish.
But the main reason we're there is for the sea lions. Again, very playful. We're in very shallow water there, so some people could just snorkel with them.
They're fantastic acrobats and gymnasts, and they were mimicking people, like our dive guide who's a free diving here. And very curious, they will come and they will show their face, they look into your domes.
We also had some sardines at the same time and using them as a design element with the images. Lots of times we'll jump in the water with our dome covers, take them off, put them on our arm. At one point I thought I lost my dome cover. I turned around, 2 sea lions were playing frisbee with it.
So at the next dive, I brought my plastic shoe, I put on a line, and I let them play the puppy, and he just came, he grabbed it, and we're playing like a tug of war. It was so funny.
Just like a lot of marine life, you'll see they'll come in, because besides being curious on you, they'll wonder who that animal is being reflected.
But they're so fast, so you have to put your shutter speed much faster and put your strobes to the full strength in order to get the motion. So this is one of those just passing by and scaring off the steelfish. This is a family of 3. Just mom and the pups were very curious, and they came to me, to my camera. And obviously this is an acrobat, right? He just wants to show me his skills, which I wish I could, be able to show the same, but I was not.
So we travel light, very light, as you could see. So with 2 of us, with dive gear and camera gear, you could see there's a lot of extra luggage.
Actually, half of the luggage was already out the door. So, but that's what we have left. Only half what you could see it here.
But how do you do that with all the limited luggage allowance?
We answer questions.
You pay the bill.
You pay the bill.
Yeah, but even internationally, sometimes you can't pay the bill.
So far, we've been lucky. We've been able to do it. The other thing is asking about luggage and how we travel with all of this. We usually manage to get everything into 2 50-pound, for each of us, 2 50-pound cases, and then our carry-on weighs about 200 pounds. So we bring that. So far we've been lucky and they have not weighed our carry-on for the most part. They will now start doing that, some airlines. It was actually very funny because I guess it was to Malaysia. They did. Yeah, there was a flight to Malaysia. They weighed our carry-on. They said no. So we took stuff out. Olga sat with it. I brought it over. They weighed it. They said, fine, it's carry-on. I brought it back. We put it back, and we got on the plane. So far, we've been lucky with that. We have a big trip coming to Papua New Guinea, and I'm a bit concerned.
You need to bring the valuable camera stuff always on you.
We try to keep the camera in the carry-on. In the carry-on.
To Jane
In Thailand, just so you know, because you're going everywhere, even the ferries will weigh it, and they'll harass you and make you pay all kinds of fees forever.
Yeah. I understand that it's a problem. It is a problem. We try not to check the camera gear. As a matter of fact, recently on the way to Antarctica, David Duboulay and Jen Hayes, their box of the camera gear made it off the plane. The lock was cut and the gear was missing. So you do, what's that?
What happened?
Strobes.
What happened was David and Jen, on the way to Antarctica in Argentina, they got all their equipment robbed that they checked.
They weren't the only ones.
They weren't the only ones that happened on
There
that?
were people on the same flight that their stuff stolen.
Right, okay, so Marco with that, because I know, and there certainly was somebody must have been on the plane, because the bags made it, everybody else's bag actually made it off.
Yeah.
So the bags came and the bags came empty. Luckily, it was a Lindblad trip. B&H does a lot of work with Lindblad, so there was a photo locker on the boat. And also, since it's kind of a sponsored thing with National Geo, the stuff that Lindblad doesn't have on the B&H locker with the housings and the underwater strobes, National Geo was able to get down to them on the next flight.
So the lost housing, strobes, everything.
So you do have to be careful. And insured. Of course, that doesn't help you if you're down at your location and without gear. O-ring grease and your O-rings is all that goes between you and a flooded camera. So make sure your O-rings are in good shape. Make sure you grease them properly. Just a little bit of grease, not too much on there. Also, a lot of companies say you should use their O-ring grease. I would say do it because why not? Crystal lube, which is used for nitrox and O2 regulators, that could pretty much be used on all O-rings.
And what I noticed is that when you dive on a sandy bottom, with the heavy currents especially, you're going to have a lot of sandy particles on the rings. Every time after every dive, make sure you clean it up.
What do you do when you put this on? After a while, the O-ring is kind of gooky, and so everything sticks to it.
When the O-ring gets gooky or sticks, there's no reason not to wash the O-ring in water.
I always wash it, but you can't use soap, right?
No, I would just wash it in water. Usually it comes right out. You should be able to clean it.
And is it dangerous when you are wiping it so it's stretching a little? I'm just paranoid it's going to stretch it out.
You got when you're doing this and you're putting your fingers on there, you just kind of go, you stretch it a little, but you don't want to stretch it a lot. So guys, we're going to go for questions in a second. Oh, so with the photos afterwards, we try to get the best possible, everybody works differently. We try to get the best possible photo in the image. When we shoot it, we do shoot raw, but you still want to use Lightroom, Photoshop, or Photoshop elements to kind of work on your images afterwards, and we just go from there. So the important thing is experiment. We're shooting digital. We could shoot hundreds of images on each dive and have fun with it. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I think we're going to end this now. So thanks very much, everybody. And we'll continue the conversation.